Hello and welcome to another episode of my Datsun 2DZ project car build. I'm Dave, this is Grindhouse Performance Engineering, and in today's episode, we're going to be picking up where we left off with the fuel system and seeing how much further we're going to get. Stay tuned. Couple quick announcements before we get started today. One, we're coming up on like 2,000 subscribers, which blows my mind. And I want to do like some kind of ask me anything / Q&A session for you guys. So if you guys have any questions about the Datsun, Paprika, the shop, me, whatever it is, drop them below this video and I'll compile. Oh, jeez. If I'm still alive by then. And I think it'd be fun. I don't know. So drop some questions below and I'll group them together, and in the future video we'll try to answer your guys' questions. You can learn a little bit more about me or whatever it is you guys have questions about. Secondly, we've got some new shirts for sale. They're on the website. I'll put a link below. They're pretty funny. I like them. I get a lot of comments on it, and I think it's fun. So if you want to get one, go ahead and check it out. But yeah, on to today's video. In the last build video, we got a really good start on the cage for the fuel cell. We've got all the upper structure together, the lower structure together, and it looks really good. But there's actually still a lot of work to do before we can actually get this whole thing into the car. I want to mount the fuel filter. I want to go ahead, I need to get the tow hooks on here, the jacking point on here, and this bottom piece is still, it's not actually attached. So I want to be able to make this bottom tubular structure completely removable, just because I don't want it to all be one big welded piece, because I don't think I'd like that as much. So the first thing that I want to do today, this is actually the mount for the fuel filter. It's actually a really cool piece. It's got all the fins on it for cooling, and it's just overall like a really cool looking piece. And I'd like to showcase it so that when you look in the hatch of the car, you can see it. And the bolt pattern actually matches to the side of the fuel cell. So really, I could just run the bolts in and be done with it, but that would be way too easy and that wouldn't challenge me. And that's kind of the point of this build, is to challenge myself. So I want to try something. I don't know if I could do it. I really don't. I know I say that a lot and then things like come out really well, but I am making this up as I go. So let's try to make something a little bit cooler to go ahead and mount the fuel filter. Let's get into it. I've got an idea that resembles something similar to what Nate and I had done with the custom mufflers in a previous episode. I like the idea of making this out of stainless so I could leave the materials raw and unfinished to fit the theme of the build. The template's going to serve as a loose guide to shaping the leftover exhaust hanger material in the bender. I want the frame to fit tightly around the filter housing, so this part looks intentionally designed for it. The challenging part to these frames is getting all 4 of the bends in the same plane, because if you don't get it that way, it's going to be wobbly and it's going to rock and it just won't look right. I'm using some spacers and a straight edge to make sure that all the bends are going to be in the same plane. I want to jump in really quick and show you guys. So the rod's bent. It actually fits really tight around the housing. That's exactly the look that I was going for there. Both the ends are a little bit long, just because I wanted a little bit of adjustment before I cut them off at the end. So I left them a little bit long for now, and we'll cut them at the end. So next up, I'm going to put some stainless strip on top, and then we'll cut some holes and we'll see what happens. Since the first paper template doesn't exactly match the rods, I'm drawing another one to use as a guide for the sheet metal. I'm tracing the inside of the rods, then cutting an offset into the template so the finished part will rest on top. To set the spacing for the dimples, I'm using an aircraft tool normally used for like setting rivets. I'll put a link in the description to this. It's super handy for doing stuff like this really quickly without having to do any math. Here I'm hoping that drilling through the wood will help stabilize the hole saw and keep it from walking around on the stainless surface. Since this is not going to get any kind of top coat or refinishing, I want these to look as clean as possible on the bare metal. With the holes drilled, the dimples are made using the hydraulic press and a set of dies I've got. The process here is really straightforward. All you really have to do is make sure that the dies are fully compressed so that the sheet metal is still flat at the end. If you don't do that, you're going to have some warpage to the panel. The last bit of metal shaping before welding it up is putting some flanges on the end so that it sits flat on the frame of the fuel cell. One trick for stitch welding sections like this is if you mark your start point and then actually tack weld your finish point, when you go to weld the bead, you'll actually see the tack through the weld pool and you'll know when to stop. This will help you have really consistent, like 1-inch stitch welds in your parts. The last thing to do on the part is to drill the holes to actually mount it to the fuel cell frame, and then to drill the holes to actually mount the fuel filter housing to the part. last step, which I apparently did a really poor job recording, is actually drilling the frame for the fuel cell and then running a tap for the 4 bolts that'll mount the strap in place. So I know I got a little bit carried away with this one, but it turned out exactly the way that I had it in my head. It turned out awesome. So it's all bolted in now. Just so you guys remember, these are all actually bolted to the frame as well. So this strap isn't to hold the fuel cell down. It really is just to hold this fuel filter mount, which again, really could have bolted right to the side of the fuel cell, but you know, I think this looks way better because it's going to be visible. You're going to see it through the hatch. You know, it's going to be a focal point of the car when you have all the fuel system stuff in there. It's going to look really cool. But it did take way longer than I planned on. So I think this is all that I have time for today. So I'm going to get to editing. I'll get it to you guys. Be sure to drop some questions. So I think it would be cool to do an Ask Me Anything kind of thing. So definitely drop something below, and I will see you in the next episode.